Hello, my name's Andy. Welcome to episode 42 of Keeping Water. In this week's episode, I'll be showing how I've tried to encourage the fish to be more confident when I'm close to the pond. And I'll also show the latest water tests, which has an interesting result that answers some questions I've had for a while. My subs are continuing to rise steadily, well past any ambitions I had when I started, and I'm really grateful to everyone who both takes the time to watch but also subscribe. If you haven't yet subscribed, consider that over 230 people can't possibly be wrong. And remember that if you click the subscribe button, your fish will learn how to complete synchronized swimming routines. Again, as I think there's still some people who don't believe me, stick around to the end of the video and I'll once again show you proof. Right, let's get started. With spring fully here, and even with my uncovered, unheated pond in the not warmest of springs, the fish have been really keen on feeding and become really active. So, with the fish enthusiastically on the food, it's been time to have another go at encouraging them to be a little more relaxed around me during feeding. As you may know, my fish, the carp especially, are quite easily spooked and tend to dash to the far left corner whenever they see anyone approach the pond. I've always had mixed feelings about this. On one hand, I'd like them to be a little more confident, but on the other, it's a good natural instinct to have to help protect them from predators. But there would be benefits to them getting a little more confident, for example in allowing me to see how much each fish gets to eat. I obviously also capture this through underwater filming, but I'm not going to be doing that at every feed. It also helps me see any issues the fish have, which will become a little relevant later in the episode. So I made a plan, which I've been following for the last few weeks as the fish's appetites have grown. To start with, I didn't film, as sometimes even a selfie stick spooks them, so what you're watching here are a couple of the latest attempts. The plan is as follows. At every feed I approach the pond slowly and make sure that they've seen me approach before I get too close and start feeding them. This is because they spook less if I haven't suddenly appeared close to them. Anyway, I sit on the bench and then feed small amounts of sinking pellets to about the middle of the pond. At the moment, I'm not planning on trying this with floating pellets for, well, a number of reasons, which I'll also get to later. As the fish begin feeding, I've then gradually thrown the pellets nearer to the pond side, and obviously me. Ironically, as I'd worried about their timidity when feeding, and especially around the bigger fish, the crucians were the first to buy into this plan, followed by the smaller tench. However, it didn't take long for the carp to join in. I think the other fish feeding, and their increasing appetite, persuaded them to take the plunge. So, after a week or so, they regularly fed for all or most of the time within 4 foot of the side of the pond. They dart away at the smallest sudden movement on my part, including throwing pellets in, and sometimes still do, but as they've become more confident, they now just swim a 180 and come straight back. So, after a few weeks of this, we're at the stage when even the carp will swim towards me when I sit by the pond, and look for food as their first response, rather than, oh crap, swim away, which is good. That they're still a little nervous is no bad thing really, but this approach has enabled me to have a little contact with them, rather than throwing food in from a distance and then leaving them to it. I have absolutely no plans to get to the stage of hand feeding them, and I'm also in no rush to get them surface feeding that close to me, but this is a definite improvement for now. During this close call to feeding, I noticed that the mirror carp had damaged a scale near its tail. It could have happened on the pump or the new pipework I put in. I really need to cover the joints and probably should have last week. I've no plans as it stands to do anything to the fish. It looks healthy and I don't see as yet any reason to net it and treat. Unless anything worsens and there are any signs of infection, I'll just keep a close eye on it. I've done less underwater filming this past couple of weeks, predominantly due to the new fish and the new feeding regime. But I'll be putting the GoPro in the pond again over the next week and I'll take a look at the mirror and the crucians especially to see how their damage has healed up. Finally, I really like this bit of video. Here, I'm just approaching the pond, not to the usual spot, and I don't sit down and feed, but both carp slowly approach me and get much closer than they would have previously, which I think shows that they're starting to associate me with food, instead of weird things like cutting plants and pipe work and vacuuming and netting. I've got a few plans for feeding this year. Firstly, as you've seen today, getting them a little more confident. Secondly, to feed as much, if not more, sinking food as floating. All the fish, aside from the rudd, feed more naturally from the bottom of the pond, and I think I'll get more consistent feeding by doing this, as they'll both feed more quickly and easily and lose less food to the skimmer than they would with surface pellets. My next idea was to get some food specifically for the rudd, who I've neglected somewhat over the years and left them to get by on their own, save for the odd cube of bloodworm. So I've bought them some 2mm sinking pellets, which are designed for young koi. They sink really slowly, which is ideal for the rudd, and so far they seem to be enjoying it. I also got the pellets with the crucians in mind, but they're snacking happily away on the smaller carp pellets with no problems. Next, I'm going to swap from the sinking pellets, that are a little cheap to be honest, and instead use the Orchard Fisheries floating pellets, but prepare them to sink by using some water in a syringe, as I think they're a better quality pellet. Finally, when we get into the summer proper, I'm going to be doing some tests with various food items, not particularly to find a better nutritional source, but to see what prompts or doesn't prompt a feeding reaction from all the fish. Everything's on the table, so to speak, as long as it's edible and not harmful to them, and I'll obviously film them while I do. Any suggestions for items to try, please add in the comments below. With increased feeding, changes to the filters and some new fish, and with the filter media still getting up to speed after winter, water testing has been more important than ever, and I've been testing regularly. I'm delighted to report there's been no changes since the last time, well mostly anyway, and importantly the ammonia and nitrite tests have results that are as low as they can go. I'm pretty pleased as my filter, and again I'll add the caveat of so far, appears to be performing better than ever with the changes and hard work I've put in. Now, the one area where I've never really had a bad harmful result, but never really had a low result either, is nitrate. I mentioned this when I showed my last test results, and another YouTuber, Corbyn, who's a really knowledgeable and supportive pond keeper, mentioned that I should check my tap water to see what the nitrate levels were in it. It is a little strange that, even in winter, even with all the plants I have, I've never really had low nitrate levels. So this week, I tested my pond and tap water. As you can see, the nitrate in the tap water is higher than in my pond water and looked between 12.5 and 25 milligrams a litre. For the first time, my pond water is pretty much at zero, which is nice. Anyway, it seems that my filtration has to not only manage the nitrate produced in the pond from the conversion of ammonia into nitrite and then into nitrate, but also the nitrate that comes in the tap water. I change, year round, about 7.5 to 10% of the water a week, sometimes as much as 20%, so there's always a fresh supply going in, on top of whatever the fish produce. Anyway, I'm not too worried. The nitrate is not ever at a harmful level, and the test results does explain why, until now, I've never managed really low nitrate levels. Why I have now, I'm not sure. It could be the changes I've made to the filtration, or it could just be that it's peak growing time for the plants, as they use up more nitrate when they grow. Time will tell, but it's nice to get a little more knowledge, and I thank Corbyn again for the tip. Thanks very much for watching this episode of Keeping Water. I really do appreciate it. In next week's episode, I'll be taking a look at the fish underwater after the little break, having a look at how the crucians are doing and the mirror's damage scale. I'll also be... Hold on, I nearly forgot again. Here's the proof of the fish doing synchronised swimming. Anyway, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.